So good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar of the Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Program, Beyond the Post, Leveraging the Power of Social Media to Connect with Youth and Other Stakeholders. My name is Patrick Ahern with RTI, and I'll be helping out with the virtual room today. So please note when you log in, your microphone and web camera will be automatically muted. If you have any questions for our presenters today, please submit those into the Q&A window, and we will address them as time permits. You may also click on the raise hand button and we can unmute your line if you would like to ask your question verbally. And if you happen to run into any technical issues this afternoon, please reach out to me in the chat window and I can help troubleshoot. So at this time, Katie, I'll turn the session over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick, and welcome everyone on this hot, for us, it's still a late summer day here. Our kids don't start school quite yet. As Patrick just went through some of the logistics for the webinar today, and also if you do submit a question and you have a specific presenter that you would like them to answer, we have a number of presenters for you today, so feel free to identify those. We hope that by the end of this webinar, you'll be able to plan and develop a social media strategy to engage youth and parents in your adolescent pregnancy prevention programming. We also want to break this down so that it's not an overwhelming task. We don't think it should take many, many days to do this, but are hoping to give you some tools that can help you create, manage your social media content, some ideas for how you can engage youth in content creation, and we're going to share some examples of strategies that we've used to boost engagement and expand reach through ad targeting and partnerships with youth influencers. So first, we'll talk a little bit about just kind of how do you plan your social media approach and what could that look like. We'll have two wonderful grantees sharing their experience developing social media strategies and how that's ongoing. Lindsay Weaver from Oregon and Catherine Bell from the Center for Supportive Schools in New Jersey. We'll talk about some youth engagement strategies, and then again about how to increase engagement on your social media and expand reach. And because we have so many presenters, we're actually going to hold questions till the end. So again, feel free to use the Q&A. We'll remind you how to do that again at the end. Before we get started, Patrick, if you want to go ahead and launch the poll, we'd love to learn a little bit more about whether or not you have experience using social media in your APP program implementation. So just go ahead and give us a yes or no. We'll just take a few more seconds. Patrick, if you want to go ahead and share the results while they're coming in. Awesome. So we're at about 50-50. So that's great. And I would encourage you all to use the chat, and hopefully we'll hear a little bit more from some of the experiences that you have in your social media work as well. And maybe we'll give you some new tools. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and pass it along to my colleague Amanda, who's going to tell you a little bit about some strategies for planning.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katie. Can you all see my screen? Awesome. All right, so my name is Amanda Seagroves, and I'm going to kind of take us through this first part of our presentation today. So my section is called Planning Your Social Media Approach. So to start off, I just want to kind of quickly just, reiterate kind of the importance of social media. So as I'm sure all of you on this call know, social media is incredibly pervasive in our society. According to research that's been done by the Pew Research Center, nearly 7 in 10 Americans have used some sort of social media. And as you can see in this graph, social media is kind of a broad spectrum. And so it does include things like YouTube, obviously Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. But social media is incredibly prevalent in our society amongst all populations. And teens in particular are prolific social media consumers. Many teens spend many hours on social media every day. And so what does this mean for you? This means that leveraging social media can be a very powerful tool to share your programs and services that your organization offers, but also to share relevant health messaging to your communities. So in this section, we're predominantly going to cover sort of the social media roadmap. And I know based on the poll that we just conducted that it seems like 50-50, some of you have had experience using social media in your APP programming and 50% have not. And for anyone, this sort of framework or this roadmap can be a great tool as you sort of plan your social media and then also refine your social media, because it is important that sometimes we kind of check in and do kind of a pulse check to see if our strategies that we're implementing are working. And so essentially, over the next few slides, we're going to kind of go through this roadmap. So to start off, really one of the most important first steps that you can do is sort of identify your objectives and your audience. And it's really important to define these because this is, really going to drive what you do on social media. And so your objectives can be things like, what are your communications aims? Do you have a website or a particular thing that you actually want to promote within your community? Do you want to help recruit youth to actually generate content? So sort of establishing those objectives early on is really going to help you sort of plan how you approach social media. And then kind of the second part of this is really engaging your audience. And as we know, this is one of the most important things that to determine when you're thinking about your social media approach. Who do you want to engage? Do you want to engage teenagers? Do you want to engage parents or caregivers? Or is there maybe a particular niche audience that your organization is really interested in kind of engaging with? This could include maybe like foster parents or runaway youth stakeholders. So it's really important to kind of define this early when you're sort of planning your social media approach. And, kind of going back to that previous slide with identifying your audience, as we know, different types of people use social media differently. So I think it's kind of becoming a common thing that, old people use Facebook. We talk to teens in some of our work and they always say, we don't really use Facebook anymore. They're on TikTok, they're on Snapchat, their parents are the one using Facebook. So it really is important to, as you're kind of identifying your audience, that this is definitely going to impact which social media channels you actually use in your practices. And so obviously Facebook and YouTube continue to be some of the most widely used platforms among US adults, but as we know, those demographics are changing among some of the younger folks. So platforms such as Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat are definitely more popular among younger audiences. But the interesting thing is that even among young audiences, the popularity and usage can even be broken down even further based on the demographics. And so some research shows that Hispanic and Black Americans use Instagram in larger numbers compared to white audiences. So it's definitely good to sort of do your research and what types of demographics your organization really wants to target and how they use social media and which platforms they're really engaging with. And then, so another thing to kind of ask yourself is you're sort of like identifying the social media platforms that your organization wants to use is what kind of content do we want to create and we want to promote? Because as you all know, different platforms support different types of content. So if you think about like TikTok is a video platform. And one thing that I think youth in particular really like about TikTok right now is that it feels very organic. So if you go on TikTok, you're not seeing a ton of like branded content from organizations that are creating these very tailored pieces. You're seeing a lot of organic, sort of like on the ground influencers who are actually creating this stuff. So it's definitely important, as you select your social media platforms to also think about what kind of content are we wanting to promote and that we can create. Oops, and I just got out of that. Let me go back in, sorry. All righty. So kind of on to our next thing is just creating your content. And if any of you have experience creating content for social media, you know that this can be one of the most time-consuming things about, creating or establishing a social media channel. And so it's really important to kind of think through like how you're going to create content and what type of content you want to create. And so one suggestion that we have is to create a content repository or sort of a collection of content. And that can include things like maybe like motivational quotes or photographs or videos from events that your organization has held, but having sort of kind of a collection of things, of ready to grab things that your organization can post to your social media platforms can definitely help you all save time further down the road. And so there's various types of content that you can create as well and post to your sites. And that can include like candid photos or videos from program services. And of course, one thing to consider with that is getting permission from your participants. But then also, like if you have subject matter experts at your organizations, maybe they can take like a video of themselves, like talking about a topic of interest. You can have like custom graphics with statistical quotes, and you can create some very nice graphics using free tools, or not free tools, but tools such as Canva or Animoto or Piktochart. And even if you have a staff member with the skill set, you can even use something like Adobe Creative Cloud, InDesign, Illustrator, and things like that to actually create really nicely designed visuals to post on social media. And so the next sort of like step in this sort of social media roadmap is developing editorial calendars. I use editorial calendars myself, and I can definitely say that this is a really good tool for planning for the future. And so one thing about sort of developing content for social media and thinking kind of in the future is, thinking, okay, well, what are we going to post the next month? What are we going to post the next month? And an editorial calendar can really kind of help your organization stay ahead of the game. And so basically what an editorial calendar is, it's a schedule of sort of content that's going to be posted. And I've included a screenshot in the slides here of a sample sort of editorial calendar that we use for one of our social media campaigns. And so in this editorial calendar, we have things like the channel. So for us, it's Instagram and Facebook. And then you'll see stories here, meaning that this particular content is going to be posted to Instagram stories, the desired publish date, the desired publish time. Oftentimes we will include sort of the graphic or the image or video that's actually going to go along with that post. And then of course your caption and hashtags. So having an editorial calendar can really be invaluable to kind of like getting ahead, planning for the next month. You can even maybe do it on a week-to-week basis if that's the capacity that your organization has. But developing an editorial calendar is really a great tool in your arsenal for sort of planning your social media approach. And then sort of the next tool or tip that we have is using social media management tools such as Buffer and Hootsuite. So again, I know a lot of you are coming from organizations where you may not necessarily have a dedicated social media person that can just do this every single day and be on top of posting content to your platforms. So having a social media management tool like a Buffer or a Hootsuite can really kind of pair nicely with an editorial calendar, because what you can do is you can go ahead, plan out all your social media content maybe for every 2 weeks or every month. And then once that's approved internally, you can go ahead and just upload this to a dashboard, put this into a Buffer or a Hootsuite, put the caption, the hashtag, the image, and then you can just schedule that and then forget it. Like it's done, that it's going to be scheduled to release. So a social media management tool can definitely be helpful for an organization that's looking to create efficiencies when you have limited staff time, but you do want to use social media to engage your target audiences. And then lastly, it's really important to kind of think through sort of the moderation of the platforms. So asking questions like who is going to answer direct messages to your social media channel. If you have an organization that is providing services, one thing that I found is that you will occasionally get someone DMing you, asking questions like, what are your hours? How much is this going to cost? So things like that. It's really important to have maybe even sort of like a bank of responses that's already pre-generated that someone could just copy and paste into the DMs. And then also, like, how will you handle comments? And that can include positive comments, like, is your policy going to be that you're going to like every positive comment? But then also sort of negative comments. What if someone is challenging something that you've posted about? Like, how is your organization going to handle that? Is there sort of an approval chain that you need to go through to make sure that your response is evidence-based? Are you just going to delete comments? Things like that. So moderating your platform is definitely something that you need to think through, as you're kind of establishing your social media approach. And then, so we do have a chat question. So how would you like to use social media? Which type of audiences would you like to engage with? What are sort of your communication aims? I'm going to see if I can pull up the chat really quickly. Okay, teens. And for teens, do you have any sort of specific messaging or specific goals related to engaging teens? And I think that's Larry who said that. Okay, to get more youth involved, like having them create content. I will say we, on one of our social media campaigns that you are going to hear about here in a little bit, we actually have engaged teens to create content, and they are really good at it. I mean, I feel like a lot of teens know about tools such as Canva and things like that, and they create very nicely visually designed materials. So I would definitely encourage you to engage youth to actually help create content. Yeah, having them to do more of the work. Yeah, that is definitely a great strategy. And then Tanya said recruitment. So I'm assuming that's kind of recruitment for, you know, programs and stuff. Attract youth to join youth advisor councils. That definitely is a great way. We actually have a sort of like a youth engagement platform that we use for one of our social media campaigns. And we have actually successfully recruited youth to join that website using Instagram. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to my colleague, or I think the grantee spotlight is next. So I am going to stop sharing.
Actually, Amanda, will you advance my slides for me?
And I think, Laura, are you sharing those?
Yes, I have them.
Thank you. Go back to the first slide. Thank you, everyone. My name is Lindsay Weaver. I'm with the Oregon Public Health Division. So I'm a state agency with the Oregon Health Authority. And I'm going to share some examples of, if you're a government agency and you're thinking about bringing on social media, kind of our story about how we got there and our plans for better youth engagement moving forward. So this is going to be a story, and even if you're not a state agency, that you'll get some tidbits of information that will be helpful if you have a large organization or you think, oh, we don't have a dedicated person to do social media. I'm going to share some tips and tricks and things that we've been doing on how we've done youth engagement too. So a little bit about our program. I am in the Adolescent and School Health Program, and that's our larger program that includes school-based health centers, youth sexual health, which I am the project coordinator of State Prep, and we implement youth sexual health programming throughout the state. We also have school nursing, mental health within our adolescent school health program, and a policy person for adolescent health. And then you'll see our Instagram on the side, so I'll shamelessly promote us. If you would like to follow us, we are all about connecting with partners, whether that's within our state or also nationwide. Next slide. So overall, our goal for the Adolescent School Health Program is, when we were thinking about having a social media account, we really want to do a better job of engaging youth. And we're looking at that in a variety of different ways. But one of the ways that we wanted to engage youth was through our social media. And so how we got started, I'm going to talk a little bit of like the challenges that we've had adapting and then plans for moving forward. So this is an actual post that we had on our Instagram account. Our PrEP programming does youth sexual health programming statewide for people with young people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And this is connecting back to amaze.org, which also has some resources for young people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and people with disabilities. So our approach in our adolescent and school health program was we brought on an AmeriCorps Vista for a 1-year rotation. And we had, in that AmeriCorps Vista, her name was Deanna. She was with us for 12 months, and she really did the research about what social media platform we should use to engage young people, what kind of posts we should do, time of day we should do posts, and also like days of the week. And also really helped us navigate how to bring on a social media account for a governmental agency and work through the processes with leadership and also our publications and communications department and how to get that set up within our program. We had a lot of processes that we needed to go through, and she really went to the meetings and really got that set up for us as a government agency. When Deanna left a year after her rotation, we did not have a set plan in place on what to do with our Instagram account. And that's kind of a failure on our part. And I just want to say you can come back from that if you had a plan initially, and then you lost sight of it somewhere along the way. We had a staff take on our Instagram account that was not a content expert. And that person really struggled with getting other people to create or provide content. So we had to have a coming together of our entire program and really talk about what we want to do with our social media account. And it was at that time that myself, part of the youth sexual health programming, really wanting to promote the work that we're doing with PrEP. And then also a school-based health center nurse decided to take on the Instagram account and really promote what we're doing for young people and also do better engagement of young people. So we continued also the partnership that I had with the school-based health center nurse who was part of our program. We started engaging other state agents, other state programs within our public health division. So we have the reproductive health program, for example, STDs, HIV, and maternal child health, to just name a few. And those programs also had social media accounts, whether that would be through Facebook or Instagram, and we really started partnering and talking to them about how they manage their social media account. And then next slide. So I want to also bring up that we, if you're thinking, oh, we don't have a dedicated person for social media, some of our other programs within our public health division do have a dedicated person that's just solely doing social media only, whereas we do social media for a whole program to engage young people. Our process for doing, so I don't think I mentioned this, but we selected Instagram as our platform, and we engage young people through that. With our state agency, we're required, if we're going to hold a social media platform through Instagram, we're required to make 5 posts a week. And if you think about how much content creation, that's a lot. We also use an editorial calendar that was mentioned previously to plan out our posts and share content from others. So if you're thinking it can be time consuming to create content. But one way that we have really worked with this is partnerships are so important. So it's not just partnerships within our state agency, but partnerships with community partners, with youth serving organizations, really connecting with our relationships we have with folks, reaching out to others that we maybe don't have formal relationships with, but that we're connecting with through Instagram, and really promoting and sharing content that is engaging to young people, that also serves our mission and our goals of engaging young people through sexual health, through school-based health centers, through mental health. So we do create some of our own posts, and we're working on branding. So we have a brand for our program. We have specific colors. So I also should mention that Amanda Shanahan, who is our youth sexual health research analyst, who now is the person who works with me on the Instagram account, and we do that work together, that she has really come up with creating colors that we're using. So we're using standard colors for our posts so that we're having a brand that when we're doing our own posts, it's clear that it's coming from the adolescent school health program, but that we also highlight others as well. So if we highlight something from reproductive health program that is engaging to young people, that we put that in there as well. In our planning on our calendar, we also make sure to highlight specific months. So if it's Sexual Health Assault Awareness Month, Black History Month, Asian and Pacific Islander Month, that we highlight that. We highlight young people, or we highlight people in history. Another thing I want to say about our state agency is our communications. Our communications department, when we share content, we load our content up into Hootsuite, and that is how we get since we're representing adolescent school health, we're also representing a state agency, which is the Oregon Health Authority. And so everything that we post has to be approved and reviewed by our communications department. And the communications department uses Hootsuite, and all of the programs will load either their Facebook or Instagram account or Instagram post in Hootsuite, and then it's approved through that process. We use our partners' content to share as stories. We also develop compelling content. And then some of the challenges we have is sometimes we're not as quick to post to things that are happening relevant to the day or the next day, because we have to go through an approval process, and our posts are usually like 1 to 2 weeks out for being approved. So folks who are thinking about creating a social media account, and you're thinking about how time consuming posts can be, I do want to say that yes, there's a learning curve. When I started working on the Instagram content, I invested a lot of time up front learning how to use Canva, learning, doing some research on how to best use hashtags. I had never used, like truth here, I had never used Instagram before I had started doing this for work. I had used Facebook. I'm not a young person. And so I was the older demographic. So there was more time that you invest up front, but as you go along, you find you get faster at posting, you get faster at the partnerships and sharing their content to really promote the work that you're doing. And for us, it's Youth Sexual Health with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and then also the other programs such as school-based health centers, school nursing, and mental health. So I want to say that that's another way that you can save time, is you'll get faster at it as you go along, and then also connecting with others and promoting each other's work. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about strategic planning for folks that are maybe thinking, oh, I need to have the perfect plan in place. I just want to reiterate more and more that you just need to start somewhere. So for us, it was having an AmeriCorps Vista come on, and then we floundered a little bit after Deanna had left. And we have, I think we've come a long way, but we have even more to go. So as we're meeting with our communications team, and then other programs during this monthly meeting that we have through our communications program, we're learning more strategies and connecting with others about what we can do. So we're in the process of growth. We're also in the process of learning. I say I learn something new every day, and that's especially true with social media. And that we're really thinking about, I think 2.5, 3 years into our social media now, how can we adjust to make this even better? So we've looked at our analytics, and we do engage young people. Young people are following us on our analytics, but not as that's not our major demographic. Our demographic that is following us on our Instagram happens to be adults from youth serving organizations. And so we're really looking at ways, strategic planning on how can we adjust. And one of the goals of our adolescent and school health program is to better engage young people. And one of the things that we're talking about in engagement is having a youth advisory council, a state youth advisory council, where we compensate young people for their time to give us input on our strategic planning for our program overall. And that's with school-based health centers, youth sexual health, mental health, and policy. But this youth advisory council can also help to guide our Instagram content and thinking about how we can compensate young people to either develop or guide or show us the way on what content would be most engaging. We've also learned like stories can be engaging as well, to having more people following your Instagram account. And we're looking at hiring a designer to that we can contract with, that we can talk about this is the information that we want, or this is what we're going for, and have them come back with visuals to us. And that's another time-saving way that we can have an Instagram account. And we also share others campaigns. So if there's a campaign going on around, for example, COVID vaccination, we'll highlight that too and engage young people in that way. We also use content created by young people. So whether that's content that young people have been compensated for to create around vaccination, or if they've created artwork, posting young people's artworks, poems, their input or feedback on youth sexual health. We have a lot of qualitative written experiences from young people that we can also share. And we've also looked at, or we're going to start looking at social media influences. So we have heard from other programs within our public health division that they have used social media influencers in the state, where the cost for them to promote a campaign is minimal, but the reach overall is great. And so in the future, that's something we want to look at as well. So I just want to really highlight that if you think you can't do it, we just started somewhere, and then we're going to build upon that as we go. And we have doing a strategic planning process of really thinking about where we can take this. There's a lot of benefits to doing social media messages and youth engagement. We're doing a lot of cross-collaborative work because of social media, building up our partnerships, better engagement with young people, and also the adults that follow our account, really framing youth in a way that some adults that are following might not have thought of youth when they think about mental health or they think about sexual health. And any way that we can engage young people. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I'll maybe think of it when the questions come up. But I just want to say, if you're thinking about starting an Instagram account or Facebook, for us, the other thing I wanted to say is, because we're a governmental agency, sometimes the process for us, we're a large system, so change can be slow. We're seeing more and more that young people are using Snapchat and TikTok. So we're not there yet, but we're aware of that, and we're thinking of how we can incorporate that. That might be a slower process, but once, sometimes change is slow, and then sometimes change happens immediate. So it's, for us, the strategic planning is to consider those things as well that may not seem possible at the moment, but when they become possible, that we can, we have a plan already in place to act quickly. So next slide. Thank you. So here's my contact information. I also want to highlight that Amanda Shanahan works with me on Instagram and has for the past 6 months. So if you follow us and you see posts, a lot of those posts were created by her. We've gotten really good feedback on the way that our content has been shaped. And we really look forward to engaging young people, and it's part of the process of doing our Instagram account. One thing I did forget to say that I wanted to mention is we have a youth sexual health magazine. It's called The Rational Inquirer. We've had it for about 21, 22 years. Our last publication was in 2019, and then we kind of ran into some things with COVID, as you all did. But that publication really shows the way that we want to go with the Instagram account. Is the publication is we would engage young people through community organizations or through schools, and the young people would provide content and information that they wanted other young people to know about. And so the Rational Inquirer has content about sexual health that other young people wanted to share, healthy relationships. They provide artwork, poems. And so we really want to highlight young people, and that's where we want to go with our Instagram account. And here's my contact information. So I'll look forward to any questions, and I'll pass it on to the next subgrantee highlight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. So my name is Catherine Bell, and I am the Senior Executive Director at the Center for Supportive Schools. And we are a small nonprofit in central New Jersey, central southern New Jersey, who has been around now for about 40 years. But I would like to just spend maybe the next 5 to 10 minutes sharing with you a little bit about our social media journey and how we have gotten to where we are. And we are still learning, we're still adjusting, but we are making progress, and we are excited about the progress that we have made, especially this past year and over the last 2 years through one of our programs called Teen PEP. So just to give you a little bit of information about Teen PEP, next slide. Teen PEP is the Teen Prevention Education Program. And it's this idea, it's this concept where there are juniors and seniors in your high school that are taking a daily leadership course for credit, where they get credit for it. And in that leadership course, they are learning medically accurate information. they're learning culturally relevant information as it relates to a comprehensive sexual health class. It can be a health and PE replacement course in the state of New Jersey. And then once the students learn this information, we call them peer educators. They now turnkey what they've learned in the form of skits and workshops to younger students, to ninth grade students. So they're delivering content related to social emotional learning, content that is medically accurate, right? So they're not giving out what they think or some of the myths that we all hear as it relates to sexual health, but they're giving out age-appropriate, medically accurate information in a fun and an engaging way for younger students. And it does encompass the principles of social emotional learning, youth development, and our major goal is to make sure that students, young people, have the knowledge, skills, behaviors they need to make healthy decisions, to make informed decisions, and to really have healthy relationships. Next slide. We have been around in New Jersey for about 25 years. About 6 years ago, we expanded down to North Carolina, and annually we reach about 10,000 students. And we have family nights events, and this is a school-based programming that our team serves throughout New Jersey. We have about 45 schools in New Jersey, high schools and middle schools that implement the Teen Pep program. And workshops, our workshops are fun, they're engaging, they're related to pregnancy prevention. So what skills, what knowledge do I need to make decisions related to consent, postponing sexual involvement, reducing my risk, and then also affirming identities, right? What does it mean to be accepting of everyone? And there's lots of terminology nowadays and people don't always understand what it means. And how do I not offend anyone? And what does it mean when we talk about pronouns? And what does dating violence look like? What does it mean if I've been sexually harassed and how do I handle that? And what effects do drugs and alcohols have on my sexual health decision-making? And then for our younger students, puberty, human reproduction education, and just what do healthy relationships look like overall? So youth are at the center of our programs, and we wanted to utilize our youth to really build out our social media presence. So we, as adults, we think we're pretty cool, we think we're dope, right? But youth don't listen to us as much as we like to think they do, but they will listen to their peers. They will listen to other students. And so how do we get those messages? How do we develop content that is relatable to youth, that they can identify with, and that they want to tell others about as well? So next slide. And so I think for like the past 10 years, we've had like the same 10 Instagram followers, which has been hilarious to me. But that's what we had, right? And not until the last 2 years did we start to see those numbers go up. And we saw those numbers go up when we started to engage our youth advisory board that was started 3 years ago. And using our youth advisory board to inform us around content. So our youth advisory board members, they're about usually anywhere from 10 to 13 students that are from our programs throughout the state of New Jersey. They go through an application process to be part, and they are part of this, and they are compensated. And they have to come up with topics and projects that they want to work on for the year. And we have really, because I have such an amazing team, Susan, Pam, and Portia, who are all here, and Nicole, they work with our youth advisory board. We've divided them up in groups. And one of the things that we learned our first year of hosting a youth advisory board was, hey, let's have a social media group, right? Can we have someone who wants to work on social media and see how that turns out? And it was great because guess what? We went from 10 to 30 followers. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's to have movement when you haven't seen any movement in years was a big deal. And we quickly learned that we shouldn't be trying to do everything. We don't need to be everywhere young people are. Can we find out our niche and stay there and do it well? So we decided on Instagram. Our young people decided on TikTok. Our advisory board wanted to do little small videos for TikTok. And so we said, okay. And so we decided that we were going to try and let them lead. We were going to follow their lead as to what things we should be doing and what we should be thinking about and how we should be posting on these social media platforms. And so we did. And so we started to follow their lead by actually posting their projects onto Instagram and post and using their TikTok videos and putting them out there in on both spaces, and introducing our YAB members via Instagram and TikTok as well, and letting them create the content that they wanted to see. But we were also fortunate enough to have one of our program managers, Susan Limbo, be able to take responsibility for being the adult that reviews the content that gets created, and everything gets funneled through her that gets posted. So our young people are not posting directly to the sites. They're sending everything to her. She gives them final approval, and then she actually makes the post. But they are our content creators. They are amazing content creators. Everything from memes to inspirational quotes to even looking at other organizations that they're following and say, hey, this would be something great that we can put on our account as well too. We try to post once every 2 weeks. When we initially started, we've gotten a little bit more frequent, and utilizing the YAB TikTok videos has been really interesting and fun, and a new way for us to engage young people as well too. So some of the best practices that we have discovered over the past 2 years is that Canva, and I think Amanda mentioned this earlier, is a wonderful platform for creating content. Next slide. And that is a way to have everything look professional, polished. Is very easy to use. Most young people are very familiar with creating with Canva. And then really linking content to Awareness Month. So if you think about what we heard earlier with this idea of building out your calendar, and so there's a full year, you can go and look now and see for 2021 and even 2022, what those awareness months are, what the themes are, and then start to fill in. That's how we're going to build content, and then go back and fill in the gaps and have our young people think about that, right? So if you have a youth advisory board, one way to use them so they can be responsible for different months. So we know that September is has Suicide Prevention Day in it and week in it. And so we want to have posts related to suicide preventions, including the suicide hotlines. National Sexual Health Awareness Month also falls in September. So starting to build those pieces out and looking at our other youth-led, our other youth-facing organizations and what are they posting, and maybe even reposting what they have. We also do a lot of training, and so posting our trainings out there, sharing our hashtags and our links at our trainings has also been very beneficial for us this year. Encouraging our adults. So we have adult advisors that are teaching our leadership courses in the schools. So one of the things that we're thinking about for this year is like, hey, if you're a peer educator and you're taking this course, you need to follow us you need to like and follow on Instagram and TikTok. So like and follow us as part of your class. And then encouraging our young people to really share their experiences with us so that we can also include those on our social media pages as well too. And then just wanting to highlight our messages from Team PEP as part of our content creation as well too. So really following the lead of our young people. They have such amazing ideas, and incorporating the work that they're doing with us in their schools and as part of our youth advisory board has been really beneficial for us as well too. Our youth advisory board, our hashtag is Less Smash, next slide, which stands for Speak More About Sexual Health. And so using that to lead conversations, to guide conversations and guide content creation in the work has also helped us a lot too, because it's very catchy. Less Smash, people want to know more about that. So then how can we start to build out content around that as well too? So we are still young, we are still learning, but we are so excited about the progress that we have made over the past few years. I encourage all of you to go visit us on Instagram and TikTok and like and follow, a shameless plug, like and follow us for more, but you'll have an opportunity to see what has been posted. You'll be able to see some of the projects from our Youth Advisory Board. You'll be able to see how we use the social media platforms to introduce our Youth Advisory Board members. And see they even created little mini bios, and we've included that as well too. They have published a Google website around mental health awareness. And so we've included links to all of that as well too. So as I said, we are really still learning, but we're excited about the progress that we've made over the past couple of years. And so like and follow us so that you can also speak more about sexual health, right? So I look forward to any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Catherine and Lindsay. It was really enjoyable hearing how you've been engaging your youth and maybe even stepping outside of your comfort zone to utilize social media. So hello, everybody. My name is Chloe McIntosh, and I'm with RTI International. For the next 10-15 minutes, I'll be talking with you about how you can engage youth both in content creation and on social media platforms themselves. And we'll look at some specific examples and lessons learned from the We Think Twice campaign. And for those of you who are less familiar, the We Think Twice campaign is a social media campaign designed to encourage youth to achieve their goals and avoid making decisions that might stop them from living their best lives. So it touches on healthy relationships, goals and success, more recently mental health and COVID-19. And really this campaign was created on the premise that it amplifies youth voices. So from the beginning, we've been finding intentional ways to engage youth. And if we go to the next slide, I'll just kind of give an overview of the We Think Twice community. And it's a virtual community of youth who provide feedback through activities that are posted by myself and my colleagues designed to inform content creation. So We Think Twice community, it's hosted on a platform called Community, CMNTY, which combines recruitment, data collection, participant engagement, and data analysis into one platform. And some of you have reported having like youth ambassadors or youth advisory council. So as we kind of go through this, you might consider ways that you could garner feedback from your youth councils in a way maybe similar to how we have used the community platform for We Think Twice. So who are We Think Twice community insiders? We kind of gave the youth a title. We call them insiders. And so we have about 180 active members as of last month. They range from ages 13 to 19 and have been recruited largely via Instagram and Facebook ads. They represent youth from across the 50 US states. And for youth to join the platform, we do require parental consent and youth consent before they can participate in activities. And so as you can see on the screen, it's just kind of a snapshot of what youth see on the homepage when they log in. And so what do We Think Twice community insiders do? So they respond to activities that we post weekly, and they can accumulate points that can be exchanged for a gift card incentive. So for every 75 points that they earn, they earn a $15 gift card. And so I'll just take us through the different activity types. So we have journals, which youth respond to privately, so they can't see each other's responses, only we as admin can see them. And we've asked such things as, where do you get information to help you understand COVID-19 vaccines for teens? Because that's going to help us in our current batch that we're working on misinformation around vaccinations and COVID-19 and how you can verify information online. Financial literacy is also a big topic. So asking them what their questions are around managing finances. We also have challenges, which we've used mainly to garner youth-generated content. So we were able to receive like motivational quotes that teens have submitted and created content out of that. We had a May the 4th challenge, which was Star Wars themed and a play on words. And so you submitted a post idea and post copy as well. Around that, they also have submitted content around how they manage stress. And then the questionnaires we have mainly used to get feedback on specific products for the We Think Twice website. So we have a Find Your Mentors tool on the website, for example, and they were able to provide feedback on that as well. We also have forums, if we want to go to the next slide, which are informal discussions where youth can actually see each other's responses, respond to each other. And the forums are kind of laid out across the different topic areas that the campaign covers. So smart decisions, relationships, goal setting, COVID-19 and mental health. And then they can also post their own questions around any topic that they want to for each other to respond to. And we do monitor the forum. So we make sure that it remains appropriate, the discussion within the forums. And then we also have polls, which are more like brief, multiple choice responses that youth can give. So a couple of examples, do you have a job or internship this summer? We had asked that because we were curious. We wanted to get a pulse on what youth were doing the summer that COVID had kind of hit last year. Do you think it's normal for someone to choose not to have sex while in high school, for example, was another question to get a sense of youth norms around that. We also engage youth by sending out monthly newsletters. And we've tried to kind of bridge the gap between our insiders on the community platform and our social media audience. So we highlight social media posts, website products, contests, giveaways in our newsletters, but then we also run ads on our social media to recruit youth to the community. So when it comes to integrating youth feedback into our content, there are like 4 main ways that we kind of do that. Amanda had spoken earlier about the editorial calendar. And so sometimes when we're planning an editorial calendar based on either current events or trends, we realize that we need content for that calendar. So we'll ask the We Think Twice community insiders questions to inform our development of that specific content. They also help give us content direction. So sometimes we'll ask generalized questions to see what topics are kind of fresh on youth's minds, and then create content that aligns. So for example, what is the most pressing issue on your mind today? And just kind of hear what youth have to say. Sometimes we ask questions of the We Think Twice insiders to find out how much or how little knowledge they have on a subject. Then we'll create informational content. The biggest ones currently around financial literacy. Youth have a lot of questions around saving and budgeting, investing, what's the difference between a credit and a debit card. So those questions have also helped us in planning social media content for our Instagram account that kind of gives them resources on how they can save and some of those other questions that they have. We have also recently collected a lot of information around what teens know around COVID vaccines, perceptions of COVID vaccinations, potential myths that might need busting, for example. So that's one way that we have kind of used their feedback to fill gaps in youth knowledge. And then lastly, we collect youth-generated content. So content that they create that we pretty much post directly to our social media. And you'll see some of that a little bit later, some of the content that they've created. And then us as a team, and it's okay, Lauren, you can keep it on that previous slide. We'll send out monthly memos to our team that includes a report of the activities from that month. Excuse me. And it'll kind of show like, we'll report on high level insights or lessons learned. And what's been helpful is that we've assigned like a youth engagement lead on our team who completes these memos, and their role is to kind of view content creation from the perspective of youth, keeping in mind youth feedback on We Think Twice community. All right, next slide, thanks. So I am now just going to talk for a few minutes about some of our contests and giveaways that we've done in the past to engage youth on our Instagram account. Instagram, we have both Instagram and Facebook, but I think as was mentioned before, Instagram is more common among our target audience. And so we've been running, well, this first giveaway we ran back in March of 2020. And the theme was We Think Twice Change Makers Playlist. So we collected song titles and then created a Spotify playlist from the song titles that you submitted. And we had a few requirements. So youth had to follow We Think Twice. They had to tag 2 friends. And then they had to comment a motivational song on our Instagram story post. Here you see a couple. So on the left, we created a teaser post and leading up to the giveaway. And then here you see the actual announcement on the right. As a team, we set roles for how we were going to kind of organize ourselves. So we had a music reviewer who would review the incoming titles. We had a tagging tracker who ensured that those who submitted titles had also tagged their friends. We had a playlist curator who would add songs to the playlist. And then we had an Instagram follower tracker who ensured that, you know, those who submitted titles were following We Think Twice. And we had a winner announcement creator who actually created the final post with the winners of the contest. So we offered a $50 incentive to each of the winners, and we had 10 winners in total. So kind of a lesson learned, you know, it's good to delegate specific tasks and roles to specific members of your team. And then you'll also want to consider your contest rules. What are the potential barriers to entry? And also you want to have like a nice schedule for creating maybe teaser posts. And then, you know, when you're going to actually post the announcement of the winners. All right, and then this second giveaway was done in October of 2020. It was a motivational quote giveaway. Again, you see some teaser posts and a post announcing when it went live. And interestingly, we had polled youth on We Think Twice community for the contest name. So they were the ones who came up with the name, and they had reported that they favored a simple and straightforward name for the contest. So that's kind of what we went with. And kind of a lesson learned here was we tried to reduce a barrier to entry by modifying the contest entry requirements a little bit. So it's good, you know, to kind of, if you choose to do a contest or a giveaway, to think about how you can continue to modify and adapt and figure out what worked and what didn't last time, and continue to improve on that. All right, and then we had our first major contest in January of 2021. The theme was Create Your Future, and it was an arts-based contest. We accepted submissions via Instagram, DM, and Gmail. Youth could submit various mediums of photography, drawing, painting, graphic design. And then we divided the submissions among 3 age categories. So 13 to 14, 15 to 17-year-olds, and 18 to 19-year-olds. We brought in our We Think Twice community insiders here because we recruited from that pool to serve as judges. So we were able to get 2 judges from our We Think Twice community to judge each age category. And they were the ones who picked our first, second, and third place winners. And they were also the ones who came up with the theme for and the title for our most recent contest that we just did this month, which is a poetry contest. So again, it's their ideas that are really helping to determine, how these contests are going. And then, as promised, just a couple slides showing the content that youth have created for us. So you have one that they created for a Happy Parents Day, for May the 4th, and for how tips on managing stress. And they can upload these directly to the platform. And so, as you can see, I mean, they know how to use Canva and different tools. They're super creative. And a lot of times their work resonates more with their peers than work that we might come up with. And then one more slide. These 2 snapshots just show the submissions from so on the left were some motivational quotes that they submitted that we've been able to turn into social media posts, and some submissions from the arts contest are on the right. All right, so a question for the chat. How might you all integrate youth feedback into your content creation process? And or why do you think this is important?
I can answer that for us. So the question was, why do we think it's important to have youth content in the creation process?
Yeah.
For us, in our experience with the magazine, with the Rational Inquirer, and now moving into Instagram, it's been really important to us to have youth help us with design. Youth guide us like what's important to them. They tell us like what kind of content do they want? What's the best way to engage them? Is mental health coming up for them? Is isolation during COVID coming up from them? And that we find is the best way to engage other young people. So that's where we want to move forward with having a youth advisory council for our adolescent school health program, and also engaging with young people to get guidance on our program, but also to inform our social media account.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, youth know what's going on with youth better than adults do. And Ophelia asked what platform was that? It's Community, and I can put it in the chat as well. All right, well, if there aren't any other responses for the chat, I will turn it over to my colleague, Jenna.
Great, thanks, Chloe. So I'm going to share a couple of strategies that we've leveraged for boosting reach and engagement on social media for the We Think Twice campaign. Next slide. So first, I'll just talk about how to identify and collaborate with youth influencers on social media. So when I say influencers, I know sometimes people think of big celebrities, but you can also work with micro influencers who can include youth or organizations who have influence in your community and that have reach and are active on social media, and also align with your organization's goals and can be authentic voices. So some youth might be willing to create a post just because they care about your cause, but you can also provide an incentive like a gift card in exchange for creating a post about your program. So the benefit of working with digital influencers is that they already have a trusted relationship with their audience and can kind of add credibility to your communication efforts. especially if they're sharing a personal story that can tap into people's emotions. So I've just outlined 4 steps for working with influencers that we use for We Think Twice. So first, we have kind of a set of selection criteria just to make sure that potential influencers align with our efforts. So for example, you might be looking for teens or young adults who are active on Instagram, who are local to your community, who are sharing positive content and modeling positive behavior. And so you can kind of use that criteria to select some influencers, and there are various tools you can use. I have some tips at the bottom, but there is a free tool called Brands Collab Manager for identifying Facebook and Instagram influencers. So that could be one place to start. And then once you're ready to contact people, you can create a short pitch based on their interests. So for example, if you're going to hold a youth art contest, you might reach out to youth artists and have them encourage their followers to participate. And with our outreach, we've personally had the most success with reaching out via DM rather than via email, since teens might be more active on social media, especially if they're influencers. And then when you're ready to collaborate with an influencer, you can create kind of a short, maybe 1-page brief outlining some guidelines for how you'd like them to collaborate on a post. So it could be a prompt or a brief description of what you'd like them to post about and some do's and don'ts for posting. And then also make sure that you measure the metrics from influencer posts, like reach and engagement, because sometimes influencers, even if they have a small audience, can actually have a more engaged audience. So you kind of want to know what kind of impact you're having. So if you can go to the next slide. Just wanted to share a couple of examples of how we've partnered with influencers. So one lesson learned is when we had that contest that Chloe mentioned, asking teens to share their favorite motivational songs that inspire them to reach their goals, we actually reached out to influencers who had a personal connection to music. So we reached out to musicians and dancers and kind of gave them the opportunity to showcase their talents at the same time as they were helping us promote the contest. So anytime you can kind of align your efforts with their personal interests and passions, they'll be a lot more willing to collaborate with you. So next slide. And then just another example. So we worked with a micro influencer who had about 7,000 followers. And then when we looked at the metrics from her post, we saw that she actually reached more people than another influencer we worked with who had 70,000 followers. And it was because she told, a personal, relatable story, and her post had high engagement from her audience. So that can really make a big difference. And just wanted to share, they don't have to have a huge audience in order to make an impact. So next slide. So another way that we've tried to boost our content to reach more people is you can pay to do Instagram ads or pay to boost your posts so that they reach more people. So just averaging over our entire campaign, we get about 1,000 impressions for every $2 that we spend. So we found this to be a really cost-effective way to boost the organic reach of content, and you don't need a big budget. So just a couple of steps to creating ads. First, just start with your specific goal. So do you want to get more video views, more engagements, more clicks to your website? So sort of set that as the goal of the ad. And you might also want to look at your organic metrics and just see which posts are getting above average performance, and then put your money behind the content that you know is going to get good results. that you can optimize your budget. And then think about who your target audience is and make sure that your ads are relevant for that audience. So is it more geared towards younger or older teens, males or females? Are you targeting a specific geographic location? All of those targeting options can be selected in the platform to narrow your audience. And then like the influencers, you should also monitor the results and kind of use the data to make adjustments to your creative and targeting as needed, just for continuous improvement. You can also monitor how frequently your posts are seen to make sure that you're keeping your content fresh and avoiding kind of people being fatigued with it. So on the next slide, this is just an example of how we use targeting during the Create Your Future Arts contest. We were trying to reach youth artists and encourage them to participate. It was a pretty successful contest. We got about 150 entries from teens. So we used a lot of different targeting options. And since I've made this slide, they actually have done away with interest targeting for people under 18. But you can still target by age, by location, by gender, so more of those demographics to kind of make sure that your content is relevant. Next slide. So another strategy that you can use is A/B testing. So this allows you to start with a research question and then test whether your hypothesis is kind of correct to inform your future content development. So you can run version A and version B of the same post and kind of see what gets better performance. And the key is to make sure both options are the same except for the elements that you want to test. So in this example, we wanted to test, is a story-based message or a fact-based message more effective? So we left everything else in the post constant so that we know the results are based on that one element. Next slide. So you can use Facebook has an A/B testing tool called Facebook Experiments. So this eliminates audience overlap and kind of randomly assigns your audience to see either version A or version B. And there are 3 different variables that you can test. So first is creative. You can change different text or graphics to see which gets better results. You can also test audience. So you can try showing the same post to younger teens and older teens, for example, and seeing which one, where it resonates more. And then you can also test placement. So you can test the same post on Facebook or Instagram, or you can test it as a newsfeed version versus a story version to see what gets the best results. And next slide. So this kind of explains how we approach metrics reporting to make sure that we're generating actionable insights from the data that can actually be used to inform our strategy. So like I showed in the example, you can kind of start with some research questions about the types of content you think will be most effective at generating results. And then you can kind of test whether those assumptions are correct. So it doesn't have to be an A/B test. You can just try posting different types of content. Say you haven't tried GIFs before, you haven't tried interactive stories. You can kind of test out those different types of content and look at the data to see how your audience is responding differently. And then when regularly analyzing your metrics, make sure you're looking at kind of patterns and outliers to understand what content is most and least effective, and use that to continually adjust your strategy. And then look at how your results compare both with your page's average, but also with industry benchmarks, just to understand kind of where you're doing well and where you may need to improve. Next slide. So I just wanted to share an example of how you might leverage data and turn it into an actionable insight. So for the We Think Twice campaign, we have a lot of different quizzes on our website. And we had a hypothesis that personality style quizzes could potentially be more engaging than knowledge-based quizzes, where you're kind of testing a person's knowledge on a topic. So to test that hypothesis, we created one story that was promoting a personality quiz and then compared the results with another story promoting a knowledge-based quiz. And then looking at the data, we saw that the personality quiz actually generated 3 times the click-throughs as the knowledge-based quiz. And then we also looked at our web metrics and saw that the personality quiz had a 90% completion rate compared to the other quiz, which was a 30% completion rate. So the metrics kind of just showed us that this content was an outlier and one of our most popular products. So we used this information to inform the types of quizzes we developed going forward. Great, so we have another share. So if everyone wants to share in the comments, what is one action you'll take based on what you learned today? And then I will pass it over to Katie.
Hi, everyone. We're going to open ourselves up to some Q&A while everyone is putting their questions into the chat pod. Jenna, I think a couple came in to the chat pod while you were talking. So someone's curious, why do influencers need to put a hashtag sponsored or hashtag ad? Is there any reasoning behind that you can let us in on?
Yeah, so when we worked with influencers, anytime where you're actually paying them to post, you should make sure to include that hashtag in your post, just for like legal reasons. I think there are kind of laws that you have to have kind of like, if you're paying someone to post, you have to have that kind of highlighted in the post somewhere. So we gave them gift cards to post for us. So anytime you're doing that, just make sure you provide that guidance to your influencers.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Let's see, we got another one from Larry in the Q&A pod. When you say compensate for artwork, and I think this was while Chloe might have been speaking, but anyone can take this. Please tell me more about that.
I don't know if that was for me or for Lindsay.
It might have been for me. And
it might have been for Lindsay.
Yeah. I can answer that. So for past publications, like our written publications, we've used gift cards as compensation for artwork and articles and poems and things like that. And additionally to using gift cards, and this is not for Instagram specifically, but other youth specific publications, is we've used or we've had public health student interns from a local high school that worked across different programs. And so I worked with them closely to develop design, content, and guide really like how the look of our publications for young people. For Instagram, we're not there yet in compensating youth directly for their work. So if we're posting artwork, it's typically from, we give credit to the youth artists and we highlight where they're from. But the artwork that we share on Instagram is typically from other funded programs. If someone's had an art contest or there's been a college that's highlighting youth artwork, we'll share that, give credit to the young people. But planning for the future, one thing just sitting here listening to all of y'all is we're thinking about hiring a designer, and that could be a youth designer that we contract with directly that helps create the content for Instagram. So that's one way we can compensate young people. And another way too is our adolescent school health program is really planning on having a youth advisory council to help guide our statewide work. And one piece of that is that the youth advisory council members, the young people, would be compensated for being part of the council. And Instagram could also be part of that, that we could they're guiding our work, but we could also ask them, what do you think about this content? Help us create content. That's a plan from going for the future. So we're not there yet with directly compensating them, but we have used gift cards in the past. And we partner with our partners that are having different art contests and things like that for young people.
That brings up a great question, Lindsay. Do you guys talk about with your students or adolescents or the people who are helping you, do you talk about how these skills can be applied later in life if, say, they want to go into marketing or different things like that? Do you leverage that kind of conversation with them?
Yes, absolutely. So with our student interns, when we were all working in the office, we had a relationship, or our state agency had a relationship with a local high school to have interns learn about public health. And part of the work we did with adolescent school health is I had them working on the Rational Choir, and we had discussions about that, like what content do you want, but also like, I would have conversations with them about what were they interested in doing, like what were they thinking about after high school. And some of the young people who would have to write papers for their colleges or for their high school programs, we would highlight pieces of those if they were related to youth sexual health. We would highlight those. So talking about also art colleges where young people have just graduated high school, we've connected with them and talked about how can we highlight the work that they're doing as a young person. But yes, so to answer your question, yes, we do engage young people with how can they use this, even if they're not going to be a writer or an artist, really talking about and using your voice and thinking about the audience of other young people and what that means, like coming from them as a young person and sharing like what they think is important to the rest of the state.
That sounds like a great use of time. I have a question, and this is for the group. While everyone is trying to add some more Q&A questions into the chat pod, how do you stay inspired when you are generating so much content? Do you use storyboards, or is there something that other people could use to kind of, get the creative juices flowing, as it were?
I can answer that. To start off, one thing that we've done in the past is a social media scan. So we will look at the specific accounts that that youth follow. We like on the We Think Twice community. We asked them recently, what are some specific accounts that you follow with like aesthetic feeds or branded accounts? And so looking at those as inspiration to see, what kind of accounts aesthetically are resonating with youth also can inform some of our branding and our refresh, because we're looking at refreshing our branding in the near future.
Yeah, that's great. So it looks like we may have Larry who wants to unmute himself. So Larry, if you would like to unmute yourself, please feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, hello, everyone. I had a question about the concept of compensation and then the gift card thing, just because I don't know if it's just my FISB ignorance, and I just don't know what our limitations and things are wrapped around the concept of giving a gift card. I didn't even know that was something that we could do, just because I thought that there was limitations as far as entertainment and that, like, where we could spend funds on in that way. So I'm very interested in the concept of saying, okay, hey, we're going to do this contest. Here's a gift card. Like, is there certain places that we can't get cards from, or that we can get cards from? And maybe I should go over this with like Katie and like RTI like later for like learning purposes. Maybe that would be a good thing. But anyway, as I'm talking out loud, I just was wondering if someone could help me out with that. Then as far as the copywriting concept, I know that a lot of youth like to use certain like music and sounds and things like that. And those things carry different copyrights. How does that work? And then my final question, and I know we're supposed to be done at 4 o'clock or something like that, but also, do we have to put all of the like the FISB logo and information on each piece of content that's released and out there, or is that not necessary either? So thanks.
And Larry, I'm not speaking on behalf of FISB, so you might want to run some of these questions by them. I know from a copyright perspective, we have had to include in like our contest rules, please don't use copyrighted materials, because it does get like that then could have legal implications that, you know, we don't know how to, or we don't want to have to deal with compensating artists, or that's just kind of outside of the scope of what we felt like we could handle. So we did include that in the rules for any content that we were going to post. I know many grantees do provide gift cards for different incentives for like attending programs and that sort of thing. Lindsay, I don't know if you can speak to that at all, but my understanding is that that is allowed. I know for our contract, there are some restrictions on the places to which we can offer gift cards. So we aren't offering gift cards to places where young people could purchase alcohol or tobacco products. Although the number of places that like don't sell alcohol and tobacco products is increasing, I think. Like I think CVS doesn't sell tobacco, you know, that kind of thing. So we tend to do, I think, Amazon or Walmart. And then in terms of, I think what was your last question? Can't remember now.
FISB branding, if you have to put
branding.
FISB. Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know, Lindsay, do you know about that? I don't think so, but I think it depends on kind of how you're presenting the social media account.
Yeah, I mean, working at a government agency, we have to use our own brand of Oregon Health Authority. If I'm doing a presentation and I'm talking about what we're doing with PrEP, I'll say where the grant is coming from and who funds it. But I personally, just working at a government agency, would not use FISB's branding because that would be representing them. And then any approvals would have to go through them. And so we use our own Oregon Health Authority adolescent and school health branding. And I can also answer the gift cards. Sorry, Larry, this is totally not going to help you, but because we were part of like the larger adolescent school health program, the gift cards were purchased through other funds other than PrEP. And then we just happen to use them for our youth sexual health publications. And we have rules, since we're a government agency, about what gift cards we can buy and how much they could be for and what they're for. And so, but those were not for the Rational Enquirer specifically, is what I was talking about in other printed publications. We did not use PrEP funds for that. Sorry, no,
those might be a good opportunity. But that's kind of like a very tangible item that you could maybe do some other kind of community fundraising or apply for a small grant for, or even get in-kind donations from community locations for that kind of like a gift card kind of thing. You might need to have like a disclaimer on your channel somewhere. But again, I would echo Lindsay's. I wouldn't have like any FISB iconography, but you might need to represent somewhere that's if the funding is from there. But again, your project officer could probably help you through some of those details.
Thank you.
Don't let it deter you, Larry.
Okay, thanks. That's really helpful. I just was trying to figure out how to go about that, because as it stands right now, like everything that we do, like we have our PSAs in the theater, and then we do like some billboard stuff, and with all of that, I just have the FISB logo, I have our logos, I have our, you know, the stuff, but then I also have like the little grant wording that says like what grant it is, and then like I just didn't know what the thing was, and it just gets so crowded and so just it looks like crap. And so I am like trying to figure out how is the best way to clean that up and yet still like not get in any type of like trouble or issues with anything. And I know when youth create stuff, they automatically look at whatever stuff I give them and say, do we have to use this? Do we have to say this? Do we, so I would love to one time be able to come back to them and say, no, you don't have to do that stuff. You can just give me what you like.
And we can ask some questions as well. I know Lauren just dropped the survey link. I think we lost a few people already, but we'll send it out. And I think we were at time. So before we get there, I think we answered all the questions that folks had. We did it. Well, we do have some resources to you or for you, including like the community platform buffer, and that'll be in the slides we send out after this webinar. We also include our contact information in case you'd like to follow up with some other folks or some of the folks that presented about some of our strategies. And we just really appreciate your participation today. I know it was a lot of content, a lot of different speakers, and we're excited to continue this learning journey with you all to see how we can make sure that we're getting, medically accurate, informative sexual health information out to young people, and that they know about the programs that we're serving so that we can, enroll more people in our services. So with that, we'll say good afternoon, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.